Okay, and we are live. Shalom, grace and peace to you from God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. And I pray and I hope you are well in the Lord. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And this is a very much long-awaited live streams or discussion, and I've been looking forward to, and I'm so excited to what's in store for us today. Because when the idea came about and I shared with the guest, I was wondering if he would come up to share his experience and his journey. I quickly made some notes and I said, hold on to your thoughts and let's do this online. So a lot of it is actually on hold for me to even personally hear from him as well. So I'm very thankful for all of you joining us in today's discussion. I see some of you already. Sister Lydia, good to see you. And Brother True Wine, good to see you as well. And without further ado, I would like to bring up the guests and let's get on. Here we are, Dr. Daniel. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you. It feels, as I was mentioning in our conversation, it feels strange. However, I'm thankful for your time today. We are practically, in the same country, probably an hour apart, by drive. But regardless, thank you for, it's wonderful for this technological advancement that we have today. We can connect with people from around the world and get to hear what's in store for us today. And I'm thankful. And as I would say the title of the stream or subject of the discussion is about Christian evangelism in India. Perhaps Dr. Daniel, for a start, would be it would be good for us to get to know you, and feel free to introduce yourself in whichever way that you prefer.
Yeah, so currently I am a missionary here with the Southern Baptist. I grew up and studied, my education was all in the US and Kansas City, Missouri, and came overseas in 2011. We started out in India, working in India from 2011 to 2015. And unfortunately, in 2015, we were no longer able to stay in the country. So, after some prayer and discussion with leadership, we picked Thailand and came here to Thailand. Worked as church planners in rural Thailand, in Isan, in the northeast, and worked there for several couple years. And in 2020,
Hmm.
during COVID and the pandemic and all, was praying and seeking the Lord's will for our return to Thailand. We were in the U.S. at that time, and had an opportunity in talking with leadership here in Thailand. They wanted someone to come and teach at the Thai Baptist Theological Seminary, which is our Baptist seminary that our Southern Baptist missionaries planted more than 70 years ago. And we haven't had a missionary professor there in many, many years. And they were looking to re-engage at the seminary. And
Hmm.
I, at the same time, had just graduated with a PhD in Old and New Testament and biblical studies. And so the Lord worked it all out. And so when we finally were able to come back into the country, we moved. I have a wife and four kids.
Wow.
Three girls and a boy, 11 to 6 years old. And so we moved from Royat to Bangkok and have been in Bangkok since 2021, so about 5 years now,
Wow.
teaching New Testament at the Thai Baptist Seminary here in Bangkok.
Wonderful, wonderful. And the first time we met in the Thai service of our church, and when I got to know that you teach and you're doing all these things, I was very excited because it seemed to me like, having this firsthand experience with someone so much learned. So I'm very thankful, and also I thank the Lord as well for the opportunity for this connection you coming from all the way from the US, and 2021 in Thailand. So yeah, I came to Thailand like 2017. So um, it's, I guess it's a big city. We didn't cross each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. And just a little bit before that, just how did you, so when you say that the leadership actually, so when you finished off your studies, were you studying before moving to India for the missions work, or was it after? Just a little bit about that. How did you get the, what was it, the missions idea, mission board's idea, or was it from you to move to India for the missions work?
We definitely felt the Lord called me to missions when I was 16. And ever since I was 16, I was pursuing how God would lead us overseas. But even from 16, I felt like India was the place that I wanted to serve.
Mm,
And so the way the mission works out, it can be difficult in certain countries. And so we didn't think we were going to go. And then we ended up being able to go to India in 2011 to 2015. Um, and so was working, I had finished one master's degree and was working on another, finishing up another on the field when I was in India. And as
mm,
soon as I finished that one, I was feeling a desire to learn God's word, to push myself even further. And I actually had, I lived in rural part of India in Raipur in Chhattisgarh. And so the days could be kind of slow. Let's just put it that way.
right,
There wasn't a lot to do for entertainment, and
right.
so I was studying Hebrew and Greek on my own, but I wanted to be pushed even more through PhD studies, and the leadership was happy that people were wanting to continue their studies, and so I started a PhD program while I was in India.
Mm-hmm.
um, and they had a modular program, so I was able to study from India, and would take somewhat frequent trips back to the U.S. for seminars. But during that process is when we had to leave India in 2015, um, and so then we were looking for a more stable country to come to. I never thought that I would end up in Thailand. Never had in I couldn't have told you where it was on a map before I came overseas. But in the Lord's providence, He led us here, um, and we have truly been blessed through His leading and seeing that it's been all His work and how He's led us to here.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for that. For that, a brief history how you got to India. I've always wanted to know this. This is I think out of humility as well. The Lord has given you this such a wonderful gift of learning languages. I would like to know how many languages do you speak and read?
Okay, so
Because now you're in Thailand and you've been
yeah.
in India. So and yeah, please let us know. I'm interested.
Yeah, so of course English here that we're speaking is number one. But we went and we actually learned Hindi in Dehradun in Uttarakhand in northern India.
Okay,
Our
so that's
first
a
year
different
there.
language from Hindi, right?
Hindi, Hindi, no, Hindi in Dehradun we learned. It is a
Okay,
city. Yeah,
okay.
and we had a teacher there, and so my Hindi was very good. And we served most of our time in India in Chhattisgarh, which is right in the center
Mm,
of India. And then um, through consultation with leadership, they were looking for someone to move and start some new work again in the state just east of us, which is Orissa, as they say.
okay.
And so we moved to Bhubaneswar, Odisha, in 2014,
Mm-hmm.
2014. and started learning Oriya,
Wow. That's
which
now that's
is
a different language.
another language, but it's related to Bengali, related to Hindi, and from the Sanskrit family. Uh, and uh, and so I was doing pretty well with Oriya. Um, but every year that passes, the Oriya gets weaker and weaker. So I can't say that I speak that one anymore, but I can still make out in reading quite a bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then we came to Thailand and we started in Thai. Our first year, we were learning Thai. And then we moved to Isan in the Northeast and we learned Isan, which is a Thai dialect of Lao.
Wow.
Um, and so definitely can speak Thai, Lao. Well, we call it Lao sometimes, but Isan,
Yes.
Thai,
Yeah.
Isan, Hindi, they're all quite easy for me to speak.
Yep.
I could make out some Odia if I needed to. I could get around in a coffee shop, shall we say. But and then in my studies, I have studied Greek, Hebrew as my main two languages for
Mhm.
my biblical studies, but also taught myself Aramaic while I was in India, and it's very similar to Hebrew, so I can read Aramaic.
Wow.
And then my kids and we dabble in quite a bit of Latin, trying to learn Latin, and had to take theological German for PhD studies, and I think we're about at the end. I've attempted and started and not succeeded in Sanskrit many times, but it's such a
Wow.
difficult language that
Yeah.
that's on my list of things I would like to do is better Latin, better Sanskrit, and
You're polishing some of it.
yeah, yeah.
I'm very, very, very impressed. It really impresses me. Like because with Elijah, like 2 weeks ago, he brought in the Hebrew alphabet and it was teaching me Hebrew alphabet, and it's like so young he gets exposed to this. Has such a gifted, blessed father to be a teacher, of course. And besides that Thai, because I've been here like close to 10 years, this will probably the 11th year. And I'm actually just picking up on conversation, so I'm very very, very, I would say, um I have this Christian jealous, is that quote unquote Christian jealous of you, because you came in here like in a couple of years and you were preaching in Thai language, and such a motivation. So I'm very thankful for you and also how the Lord has blessed you. So in this discussion, for the sake of the audience, and also, you know oftentimes we come across missionaries, but from different countries. But I guess you're quite unique because you're a teacher, but then you have a heart of missions. And all of us are very thankful for what the Lord has done in your life and how He has blessed your family, and also, the Baptist denomination, for the support and as well. Perhaps in this discussion, it will be good to go through your experience and journey through stories. I think that's one of the ideas that we were talking about, and I've taken some notes here. I think perhaps the first one is the slum story. Do tell us about this. What's special about the slum story? Because this came out the first when I proposed this idea for you to come online to share with us.
Yeah, yeah, I was trying to remember as we were talking about it why we were walking through a slum.
Hmm.
But it was very common that we would go visit someone and, there would be like a slum village right next to their house or something. And so, we just walk to find a auto rickshaw or something to take us home. And,
Hmm.
Indians are so friendly. And that's one thing we really do miss quite a bit about India is we've never
The
found
ties
people.
too.
Thai people are so polite and nice, but Indians are so hospitable,
Mm.
and they will take you into their home. Um, give you. I'm sure that I always said you could walk out on the street in India and eat dinner at someone's house that I didn't know that before I started out on that walk every day. I could do that
Wow.
every day. I could do that
Wow.
100%. And So this day was no different. And so it was just some young girl, maybe a teenager, maybe 13 or so. There was my wife and I were walking through this village, and she said, come have chai, come have tea at our house." And we're like, "Okay, we don't got anything else to do." We were done with the day's activities, so we're like, "Okay." We didn't have any kids at that time, so life was quite different.
Right.
And so whatever we needed to do that day, we just do. And so we came in, not only had tea, but we also they had some almost a full dinner by the time we were done.
Hmm.
They had prepared for us. I think they went out and bought something and treated us, and into their little one room house, bed on one side, and you know makeshift kitchen right in the middle, and a little sitting place on the side, and that was about all they had.
Okay.
And so, as we're sitting there with them, as we normally would do, we began to talk about spiritual things, because generally Indians are very open to that. And so that makes it
Hmm.
easy, unlike Westerners who get very intense and uncomfortable when you bring up spiritual things.
Yeah, yeah.
But
This is not the time
but
and
for
place.
yeah, not the time and place, but for them, it's always very natural, which makes it easy.
Right.
And so we brought up Jesus, and if asked if they'd ever heard the full the full story of Jesus, they said no. And so I was sharing with them in Hindi. Of
Hmm.
course, they didn't speak English. And um, so, as was normal, we'd been in India a few years, and so the father was there. He had,
Mm.
I think, three daughters there. I don't know where the mother was at that time, but uh, so he was nodding along and saying, "Oh yes, 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 we believe, yes, we believe in Jesus," and all, and as is very typical, whenever you share the gospel with someone in India,
Hmm.
they would just agree with everything you say, and that's part of like being a good host, like not offending the guest, right? To agree with whatever
Right.
they say.
Yes.
Um, in fact, the only time it ever got uncomfortable was when they realized the implications of the gospel. This didn't happen in this circumstance, but was very common.
Hmm.
Was When they get to the point when they realize that in my telling of the gospel message,
Hmm.
they are going to go to hell when they die. And
Wow.
so I would have many people ask me directly. So, and I had a very good friend. That's the first time it ever happened. I was there my first year, and I was at his house with his whole family telling the gospel. And so
Mm.
they realized the implications, and he asked me, "So you think we're all going to hell?"
Wow.
Which is that now it gets
Point
uncomfortable a little
blank.
bit. Point blank. And I said, "Well, yes." I just told them
Wow. That must be
frankly, yes.
that must have been very hard for you.
Yeah, yeah,
All
it
of us
was
actually
very.
sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But ultimately, that is why we do what we do, is because we do
Mm.
think people are going to hell, and we want to save them from hell.
Amen.
That is the gospel power. Uh,
Mm.
and as was typical, both I have my experience here in India and here in Thailand, is the Thai reaction is to smile and snicker, but the Indian reaction was often just outright laugh. And
Wow.
I told people I never told such funny jokes in India. I could never get people to laugh as much as when I told them I thought they were going to hell.
Wow.
That was like what they considered to be one of the funniest jokes.
Interesting.
Um, they just thought it. They And my friend told me that first time I told him that, he said, "Don't worry about us, brother. Don't worry about us. Bye. We're good. We're good." Uh, anyway, so they weren't concerned, and it wasn't offensive. You just think you're going to offend someone, but no, they didn't find it offensive at all. They just found it funny. Uh,
Mm.
so in this telling of the gospel with this family in the slum village, we didn't get to that point really where he was that kind of inquisitive. He was just kind of politely nodding along and not really saying anything.
Mm.
And at one point, he got up and left, and his oldest daughter, who was maybe 17, 18, something,
Hmm.
uh, she was the first person who was ever um, direct with me in what she was
Okay.
actually thinking. And
Okay.
this is kind of the heart of the story. was that
Right.
when her dad left,
Mm-hmm.
she said to me, "We don't believe what you're saying." And
Right.
so that was one of the first times where I got the truth of what
Mm.
was really, what's, actually when someone's just nodding along, they don't actually
Right.
believe
Right.
it, but
Yes.
they're far too polite to disagree with you to your face.
Right. It's just the
um
cultural upbringing, the setting that
yeah,
how they are brought up, and it's
yeah.
designed.
Well, and on top of that, it doesn't violate Hinduism in any way
Mm-hmm.
to agree with the gospel message.
Right.
There's
Okay. In
not
its essence, like
in its
hell and salvation.
in its essence, your way can be as true as mine, and that's okay.
Mm.
Um, so
Okay.
there's so in that basic core of Hinduism,
Mm-hmm.
that since always do lead to the same truth.
Okay.
Uh, the path that you're on is
Mm-hmm.
fine for you, and and I'm happy for you. And in the core of the teaching, whether they not that they actually may believe this, but in the core of the
Okay.
teaching, it's good for you to be on your path. I'm on a different path, but I can accept that your path will also lead you to the same place I'm going. And
Mm.
so that that would,
Always lead to God.
yeah, always lead to God.
Mm.
And so because that's like the foundation of belief, it makes gospel sharing very difficult, because people will accept your way, and agree that it's true, and even express outward, assent to it, belief to it.
Mm.
But inwardly, they're actually rejecting it. And this is what this young girl, was one of the first that was honest with me, which would make things
Mm.
a lot easier, really. If we were honest, then we could have a discussion. So really,
Yeah.
by just agreeing to everything we say, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it makes further discussion almost impossible.
Right.
um
Like if somebody just immediately brings out the points of contention or disagrees with the gospel message, then you would be able to progress the conversation and say, okay, why do you disagree? And here's what's from the perspective of the Bible and so forth. But at this time, like with these interactions, a lot of time it is just hidden. You wouldn't know.
yeah, yeah. And so
Mm.
most of the time we were just left with giving the message, expecting their lack of resistance, outward resistance to it, understanding that inwardly they're very resistant still. And you
Mm.
just have to leave it at that, because there's not much more you can do with that if they're not willing to go further with it, and be happy that the Lord gave us an opportunity to at least share the full gospel message.
Right, right.
um
And this goes to the second point in our discussion as well, which is the understanding, like as you mentioned, all other ways, not one exclusive way leads to God, but all other ways also leads to God. And this is where the understanding of that God is one. Maybe you can help us to understand when the Hindus, or in the Hindu context, when they say God is one, how is that different from what we say? Yeah, that would be more. That would be a bit helpful for us.
yeah, yeah. So this is related to the outward assent, the outward expression of this is a true way too.
Hmm.
In fact, the first time I ever was sharing the gospel, it wasn't the first time I shared the gospel in Hindi, but it was the first time I experienced someone giving the God is one response. He was very passionate about it. And he got really passionate. He got up in my face and had his finger up, and he was saying to me, Parameshwar ek hi hai. God is one. God is only one.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And so his response to the gospel message created passion in him for his own
Mm.
religion,
Okay.
which is to say, uh, he's almost like forcefully agreeing with me, and
Mm.
there, but the way of agreeing with me is ironically rejection of what I'm saying. So, in other words, his principle teaches him that Krishna and Ganesh and Ram, right? They're all
Hmm.
the same. They're the same manifestation of God as Jesus is.
Right. The
Uh,
continued
so
manifestation or reincarnation.
yeah, well, not
Correct.
even really deeper than that.
Oh, okay.
It is even in the greeting, namaste, namaskar, right? And a nama, right? An
Hmm. Hmm.
expression of worship, because
Hmm.
God is also in you, God is in me, and so you don't even you look past the person even in the simple greeting. Not that everyone always is thinking about this, but it is there
Right.
that you are greeting God who is inside of the person that you're greeting.
Wow.
Uh, and so, in the same way that God is in me, God could be working through Jesus, God could be working through Ram, God could be working through Ganesh, God could be working through Buddha, right? Through
Mm-hmm.
Buddha. And so, so the passion, I got the message very clearly. The passion that he was expressing of Parameshvara Kihe, God is one,
Mm-hmm.
is that I don't have to accept your way, right? Because that's his real
Okay.
message. I don't have to accept your way because my way is also true. I also am worshiping God. So is that very passionate point that they have to hold on to. In order to reject Jesus, they have
Mm-hmm.
to, they actually by, in again, an ironic way, by expressing forceful acceptance of Jesus, they are rejecting him.
Right. So it's a yes and no at the same time.
Yeah.
And also one thing that I noticed is that when you mentioned earlier, there's not much resistance, but also there's inner resistance, like that's hidden in the heart. That's very often time it's not evident in outward way, which is like God is in you. So when we say the Holy Spirit is in you, like God comes and dwells in you or changes you, you know, the afterlife effect of what when you become a Christian, that itself also is not something strange to the ears. Is that so?
Yeah.
Like, is there a
I
distinction? Like, how do they perceive that? Like, because when you present the gospel, like, what happens when you receive the gospel? And like when you
yeah.
say when you receive the Holy Spirit, have you encountered like, okay, yes, I have God in me as well? Because when you mentioned like even which is I learned a lot about my ancestors more than my parents actually from you. I learned from you more than my parents. So
Yeah.
because I was brought up in a Muslim country, so
Yeah.
the context is really really different. So you are on the
Yeah.
ground where Hinduism came
Yeah.
from. So you mentioned like when people say namaste, it means I see the God in you.
Yeah. I
Mm,
worship the God in you. It's even deeper than
wow.
see. It's Nama is worship. I worship. I worship the
It,
God in you.
it's not just greeting.
And
So I see. Yeah.
it's
Go
not
ahead.
just a
Sorry.
greeting. It's actually is a worship. So in a
Mm.
certain sense, that man Wood was trying to forcefully tell me he already worships Jesus, because
Oh.
in worshiping Ram, he is worshiping Jesus because they're the same.
Ah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and as far as like an inner sense, that is so individualistic. It's that's part of the whole system, is that since all paths lead to the same place,
Hmm.
whatever path you're on is good, therefore choose your own path.
Okay.
And so you have different, states in India that focus on different gods. So in Chhattisgarh, they're a very heavy Ganesh state. If you go to Kolkata,
Hmm.
it'll be all Durga. And
Wow.
so each, and it's not wrong of them. In Odisha, it's the Jagannath. And so each one is expressing their own path to get to God. In fact, I was on a train one time with a businessman. I was sitting next to him and sharing the gospel a bit with him. And um he had a very unique take on Hinduism. He's like, oh, all the worship and all the idols and all the all of that is not that important to me. He says, here's the one number one thing important is to bring peace in my life. And he says, here's how I do it. Every night I have to meditate and I have
Mm-hmm.
to enter into a meditative state. And this is what gets rid of my anger and this is what calms me. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, I did, we were having, the food from the train, and he said, oh, I don't eat meat. He said, but it's not because I think it's wrong to eat meat. He said, it's
Mm-hmm.
because the heat from the meat makes me feel angry, and
Oh, okay.
it disturbs my evening meditation, which is how I get my daily peace. And so for him, it was all a pragmatic choice of why,
Mm,
not a theological question, but a
right.
pragmatic question. How can I get peace in my life? And I think for a lot
Right.
of people, that is what they're that is the points of what they're doing, is that
Mm,
their worship, their visit to the temple,
mm,
whatever it is, their lack of eating certain things, fasting, is a search for peace. And so in
right.
the gospel we know gives
Mm-hmm.
true peace, gives
Right.
true peace.
Right.
Um, but that, as Paul says, the God of this world has blinded their eyes so they cannot see that true peace that is available to them. And so
Mm,
even the peace, right, that man gets, it's
mm,
all temporary. It's very temporary.
right.
Like one night he feels peace, the next day maybe he has goes in,
By mistake,
you know
he eats
by
something meat
mistake he
containing
eats
grace.
something containing meat.
Yes.
And then he's disturbed and he has a lack of peace because it's all in his control. And I think this
Right.
is at the core of it, is one system is all about my control over my own spirituality, and in Christianity we surrender ourselves uh, to God, and through His power
Mm,
we find peace. Through His power uh,
amen.
we find healing
Amen.
from
And it's all by
from from
grace.
the yeah.
Yeah, so that is so beautiful, and obviously now, being converted by Christ, you see that the stark contrast and also the difference, because it all happens by God and from God. I can relate a short experience as well. When I was working in my home country, my my boss was actually a Hindu, but is a different kind of a sect where they don't eat garlic and also onion and egg. When asked
Yeah, yeah.
why, it's actually to reduce sexual temptations. Like
Yeah,
I,
it's kind of like a James strain or something.
yeah, something like that, and it's like, but you have children. Like I seriously couldn't comprehend. When I was like young, I was obviously at that time Christian, but again, my understanding was that the Hindus were a monolith, and I think I've shared with you as well. My grandparents were Dravidians; they didn't had idols at home. So your experience in India is way more complicated, it seems, because different states, and also this is to top it off with the would they have this ancestral spirit, like do they have like house god, like family gods, right?
Yeah, yeah. When I worked in India and I would share back in the US with people and at churches, I would often say, I don't know what the number is up to these days. It's been 10 years since I thought about the number, but maybe there's 1 or 2 billion Hindus in the world. And
Okay.
one of the sayings I had was, there's 1 or 2 billion Hindus and there's 1 or 2 billion different forms of Hinduism.
Wow, is
So
that
it's almost to the point where no one person has the same
mm,
Hinduism as the next person.
so,
And so everyone has their own unique take on it.
wow. We'll get back to that, some of it, I think, towards the end, where we have your experience, one of the points that I've taken as well. Tell us a little bit about the story that you wanted to share from Miss Marie, your wife,
Yeah.
where yeah, go ahead. I'm sure you know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, this is one I teach the Gospels, and so I actually use this story quite a bit
Mm-hmm.
because it really helps to understand what's going on with the Gospels and all these people receiving healings.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, and then at the end of the Gospels, they're rejecting Jesus. And a lot of times in the Gospels, you may not put those two together. That someone
Mm-hmm.
came to Jesus and
Okay.
apparently had enough faith to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And we have many passages in the Bible talking about Jesus healing everyone who was there. And you
Right.
would think, well, anyone who received the healing from Jesus must have become a follower.
Yes.
Um, and so this was the story that my wife she had when she was out just walking to go to the local shop to buy some vegetables maybe or something. And
Mm.
she walked across a lady who lived in the slum next to our house, and had the lady, Indians being as friendly as they are, she just stopped and started talking to her. And my wife asked her if she knew Jesus.
Mm.
And, didn't even have a chance, I don't think, to share the gospel, just started with the basic question.
Right. Right.
And the lady, this all in Hindi, she said, "Oh, Jesus, I absolutely love Jesus. He healed me. He healed me." And my wife said, "Oh, really? You love Jesus?
Mm.
He healed you?" She said, "Yeah." She says, "Are you a Christian?" And she said, "No, I'm a Hindu, but I
Wow.
love Jesus. I love Jesus because he healed me." And so I think in that story, you see what's going on in the Gospels quite a bit.
Yes.
And you even see with the woman who comes and cries out to Jesus and he rejects her, the Gentile woman.
Yes.
Um, it made me understand that story was there's lots of people who are happy to come to Jesus for physical health and
Mm-hmm.
might even love Jesus. But what she was not willing to do was to give up her old system of religion and her old gods and
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice them all and follow Jesus alone. And I think you see that clearly in the gospel. There's plenty of people who are willing to follow Jesus plus themselves, Jesus plus another religion.
Wow.
This for Westerners is a bit of a hard one for us because we really, I mean, we have plenty in America. We have plenty of people who call themselves Christians and do not
Mm-hmm.
actually have a relationship with Jesus, do
Right.
not actually know the Lord. So in a certain sense, they're not any different than this lady. But the again, it's that outward frankness and the outward, telling us directly,
Mm.
I'm still a Hindu, but I love Jesus. And you can go to India and go to a Hindu temple and
Right.
see, an idol of Jesus right next to idol of Ganesh, and that's not a problem in anybody's mind.
Wow. It
Um,
never really struck me, even reading the Gospels, because oftentimes it's the major events that cloud you. I'm a lay reader. You're a teacher, so that's different, So you go into these details and agree. You're able to have this both the eagle's eye view and the in detail, right? But
yeah.
how you're describing this, that that people in India or in any setting, as a matter of fact, would receive healing, and that they would say love Jesus, but they would not be willing to give up, the past life, like when Saint Paul says to the church when he says, "Such were some of you," right? Like I think it's Peter,
Mhm.
yeah, Saint Peter talks about it. So, um, then then how does that um, um, uh, in relations to the gospel, then what's the dividing line, like how would you communicate to these people who have experienced the goodness of the Lord, and then tell them, look, you have to make a decision. You cannot serve two
Mhm.
masters.
Yeah.
What's your experience on that?
Yeah, it's very difficult for a lot of the pastors. And so I think if you want to bring up this story now, I had one pastor directly, he asked me, what do I do about all
Hmm.
these members in my church? I think I had preached that day for him. Usually if I
Okay.
was at someone's church, I was preaching for them. In India, it's just automatic. If I showed up at church, I was going to preach.
Right.
And pretty much in many places. But this was a slum. This was a slum house in a church in a slum house,
Mm.
and so all the people in the church were from the slum village there, and so he had many new converts, but he was struggling because he said they come to church on Sunday praying to Jesus with tears in their eyes. He
Mm.
says, to me, they look genuine.
Right.
But then I walk out on Monday past the temple and I see them in the temple worshiping Ganesh. And
Wow.
so he's like, so how do I understand them? Are they, what kind of believers are they? And my very simple response to him
Mm-hmm.
was, if they have not come to the point where they're willing to
Mm-hmm.
forsake all the idols and all the other
Okay.
gods, then they
Mm-hmm.
have not truly trusted in Jesus. Um,
Okay.
and even though they appear to have an emotional connection with Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
um, they have not actually made a true commitment to him, because a true commitment to him would look like forsaking all others to follow only him. And that uh, um, not that we don't have sin and we don't have, idols that we have in
Mm.
our life,
Okay.
as we term them,
Okay.
sins that are become like idols for us.
Right.
I think in the Indian context, it's a slightly different, because of what's built into the religion itself, is that it does not violate the core principle of Hinduism to be a Christian. That
Right.
you can be a Hindu Christian, and that doesn't violate the fundamentals of faith, of principles of the
Hinduism.
religion of Hinduism. Yeah.
Right. Right. The word Hindu, you can perhaps help us to understand. I could be wrong on this. The word Hindu does not necessarily mean or relate to a religion, but to a
hmm
region, right?
Yeah, that's one of the strange, things, of accidents of history, almost, relating to the
Mm.
Sindh River, and this S gets turned into an H, and so the whole people get named, after
After
the
the region.
river.
Okay.
It's a river, and I think it's in Pakistan nowadays, but it,
Right.
used to be what we call South Asia, and
Right. Right.
uh, and so I think it was, I forget the exact history, but probably somewhere around the British time, the British needed a word to describe it, um,
Right. Yeah, could be.
and yeah, probably the better term would be Brahmanism.
Mm.
That would probably be the more specific term, even though we've settled on Hinduism, at least in the English-speaking world. In
Right.
Thai, they actually call it Satsana Pram. They call it literally the religion Brahmanism.
Wow.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
and so actually, Thai people have the right word for it, um, because it is really the dividing line between a Buddhist and a Hindu. I mean, of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's many, many things, but the biggest thing is that in Buddhism, they reject Brahmanism. They reject the hard caste system.
The old Hindu, the old religion, but they embrace the new one with Buddha.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Buddhism and Hinduism really are just two sides almost of the same coin. The thing that divides them is, do you accept the authority of the Brahmin priest or not?
Okay.
Um,
So it's a
and
revolution sort of against the high priest.
Yes, yes, yes. I joke that Buddha was like the Martin Luther of Hinduism. In that he broke with the leadership structure, and so he's not a
Right.
Brahmin, right? Buddha is a king. He's
Right.
Kshatriya. He's the kingly caste.
Okay.
And which is what the word that we use in Thai for the king himself is kasat, which is just the Thai way of saying kshatriya.
Okay.
the priestly or the kingly caste. And so
Right, right.
in strict Buddhism or strict Hinduism, Brahmanism, if you will, he
Mm,
wouldn't have a right to reach the highest plane.
mm,
Um, Only the Brahmins do.
right,
So he sort of, by necessity, had to break with that system if he's going to be reach nirvana, reach enlightenment, right?
right, right. Two more questions, and we'll get the controversial one.
Yeah,
That's the last in store. It's a good thing that you brought up about caste system. So in your evangelization effort and when you're traveling through India, how's the reception of the gospel? And would you be able to identify the persons by, how is there a sort of, outward marker or identification for which caste they belong to? And how different is the reception of the gospel from with the caste people from different caste?
yeah. Well, of course, I think legally the caste system is not supposed to be in effect
Okay.
um, in India, but in practicality and reality, of course
Mm-hmm.
it is. But we lived in our first apartment complex. It was, a nicer apartment complex. So it was full of more well-off Indians. And I remember the first time they had some festival and celebrating in the apartment complex,
Mm-hmm.
and my neighbor who was not Brahmin, he said, well, he makes all the decisions and we kind of follow his lead.
Okay.
And I said, oh, really? Why is that? And he said, well, you know, he's we have the Brahmins and he's the Brahmin of in our apartment complex. And
Mm.
I had no idea he was Brahmin caste.
Okay.
And There was nothing outwardly that I could see, but of course everybody knew where everybody was.
Wow.
And so that was kind of our experience. We had no idea where anybody is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but they're all intensely aware, and it's usually rolled up in the name, so their last name would
That's
be a
what I thought
tell.
so.
Yeah.
I was in Bali. I was in Bali. So that's the caste system, although it's actually outlawed because of the Islamic, Muslim majority
Mhm,
country. But you can tell by the name of the village and also, in effect, the name itself, like some common denominator, like common name
mhm,
that's given. That's how people know. And then they also live in community from caste to caste. And yeah, so then the state that you were in terms of resistance, like in your experience,
mhm,
from what I've gathered from your experience so far, is that uh, people are friendly. They're friendly to the gospel message. They have this resistance only in the heart. Very few show it, outwardly, or disagree with
mhm.
you. Has there been any other point besides the guy who said, God is one, who is like very passionate? Other experience
Well,
where they theologically disagree with you?
yeah, I put a major caveat to that whole discussion, was that is on a person by person basis.
Mm,
But on a religion versus religion, on a social, on a community level,
hmm.
there is great resistance.
Okay.
uh and so there would be whole villages where we had to be very careful because the Hindus were very radical.
Hmm.
And if they knew that I was in that village teaching the Bible, they
Hmm.
would have tried to break into the meeting and potentially even get violent with all of us and break up the meeting.
Right.
Which did happen once at one of our meetings. I wasn't at it; it was before I got there. But our another fellow worker was there, and he happened to just have left, and they came with sticks and broke up the meeting. And so there is very strong resistance in that sense. um,
Mm,
in our specific state in Chhattisgarh, of course it's usually the high caste have most to give up, right? They have the position of power, so if they accept
okay.
Jesus, then
Okay.
they're going
They're
from
losing
the
a lot.
highest. everything. They're
Oh,
losing
wow.
all their. If you become a Christian, well, then you have gone to the dead bottom
Wow. Okay.
of the caste system, right? Because
Okay.
you're the worst of all, and
Because
so
you have
it's all.
abandoned the ancestral religion and culture and
Yeah,
everything. Okay.
yeah. But more than that, you've just given up all your power and influence because you've rejected your caste.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
and so no one will look to you. You know, you're not going to be the person that they're all looking to make decisions in the apartment complex anymore. Though you would be the person they would all give the evil eye to as you walk by in the hallway. Uh, so you would have a 180. So that always, biblically, we know that it's not the wise and the powerful who are most open to the gospel. It is those who are
Mm,
rejected in society, who God has chosen
right.
to shame the wise and the powerful.
Yes. Amen.
And certainly it's that way in India,
Mm,
where generally it's the untouchables, the Dalit, right, that are the most receptive to the gospel. Our state was unique in a little bit because there was a specific people group called the Satnami, and they had,
mm,
as far as we can tell, they'd had some contact with William Carey or one of his missionaries. We're not sure. And this missionary, not William Carey, or anyway, so they had a guru, a teacher who had interacted with William Carey and had brought a corrupted gospel
hmm.
that said, "We are looking for the one with the true name," which is what Satnami means, the true namers.
Okay. Okay.
And so, but we don't know who he is.
Ah,
So it was a Christian form of Hinduism, basically, who didn't know who the Messiah was, but they're looking for a
interesting.
messianic figure who had the true name. And so Donald McGavern actually was the first one to work with him. And I'm not endorsing Donald McGavern in any way, but I am grateful for what God worked through him despite his flaws. And so he started a movement among the Satnami. And so most of the believers that we encountered in Chhattisgarh were former Satnami because they were open to the,
Mm,
the
mm,
one with the
mm.
true name. And so when someone came with the real gospel and said, "Let me tell you who has the Satnam, who has the true name," oh, it's
Interesting.
Jesus. They would be much,
Right.
they were much more open than your average Hindu. So again, India is such a diverse place that it's very hard to pin it state by state, village by village, province,
People are people. It's just
yeah, people,
individual conversion experience.
yeah, yeah. But there is probably, some of those things that we talked about are at the core of everybody, which is God is one.
Hmm.
I can accept Jesus and not give up my idols. Um,
Right.
and really, it's about my own personal fulfillment,
Right.
um, not about belief in exclusive belief in Jesus.
So it's philosophical rather than objectively grounded, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I gather that from you. This is the controversial part. I wanted to talk to you about the yoga. So I think it from the Christian perspective, we would like to understand what yoga and means and what you know how much weight it carries in terms of the religion of Hinduism itself in its connection to it.
Mhm.
um, because there's some, I would say, misinformation even among the Christians, or perhaps deception has crept in into some Christian circles as well, to say that okay, yoga is fine. What's your take on it? And since you have
Mhm.
encountered on the ground
Yeah.
in the country of India.
Yeah. Well, you meet a lot of different types, both in India
Hmm.
and the U.S. In fact, I once attended a church where they had Christian yoga in as part of one of the weekly activities for the women. We're no longer at that church. That was a factor in why we're not there.
Mm,
And so it's very common in the U.S. For people to accept yoga as an adaptable practice for the Christian as well. And
right.
so I think when people ask us this regularly because we lived in India, they know that we probably have an opinion about it. I usually say
Okay.
something, give a little bit of the history is helpful and the meaning in India. So yoga, right,
Mm-hmm.
is a word that means we have a cognate in English. We're both Proto-Indo-European languages, right? So we have cognates with each other, words that came
Mm-hmm.
from the same word. So in English, we call it yoke, right?
Yoke.
So
Okay.
yoke, and yoga are cognates with each other. They come from ultimately the same word back to our mother language. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is the idea. That is the idea of yoga. So you should think of it like that in English, yoking.
Yes.
And so the point is to yoke yourself to the divine, to yoke
Mm.
yourself to the divine. And so in one sense, it probably arose from a pragmatic, like the priests sit around doing nothing all day, and
Okay.
so they need some stretches that will get them some exercise and
Right.
make them limber. In another sense, yoga would often be very demonic,
Right.
uh, and people would be able to perform feats in yoga that could only happen. Some of it may have been trickery. And if you've ever seen the yoga people who try to fly, that like they're just jumping really high while sitting down. It's acrobatic, but I don't think it's demonic.
Right.
But
Right.
there's like, I think it was one man who stood on one leg for like 10 years or something ridiculous like that. I remember from this newspaper one day, this is yoga, right?
Mm.
So it's while it does have some aspect of stretching and health, it really is more about that man I met on the train, which is, what do I need to do to my body to yoke
Mm.
myself to the divine, to get rid of my sin, to get
Mm.
rid of my heat, which is bothering me, my anger. How do I get rid of that? And that is the point of yoga. And it was brought to the U.S. The Beatles were a heavy reason. They were a vehicle which was used to bring Hinduism and yoga to the West.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very intentionally. I've been to the ashram in Rishikesh where the Beatles stayed. I've seen it actually.
Wow.
And so for the Beatles, it was directly religious, and the people, the guru who brought it through the Beatles and brought it to the West through other people as well. It was very
Mm.
intentionally to bring Hinduism to the West,
Right.
because it is at its core a religious practice. And so the names Surya Asana.
O-
I'm not a
Okay.
yoga expert, but Surya being sun, so it's
Okay.
the worship of the sun pose. And
Right.
really, if you look at the actual pose of some of them, they have no value in
Right. It's
actually improving your physical condition.
right.
It's
Right.
like the yoga man who stood on one leg for 5 or 10 years, whatever it was. That was detrimental to his health, not beneficial. And I would say there's a lot like that where it's detrimental to your health, or just simply pointless. And so there's
Yes.
there's Surya Namaskar, yeah, saluting the sun.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it doesn't have any value. But I would see, this is something you would see. I'd walk out on the street in the morning, and even here in Thailand, I've seen it from time to time. People just standing like this in worship of the sun.
Right. Right.
Um, as the sun comes up every day.
Yeah.
And so at its core, it is religious. And I think Paul actually, it's unfortunately because we don't understand the Corinthian situation, it's hard for us to understand, make the leap of what the principle is that we can use in our practical life. But I think
Mm.
Paul makes it very clear that there's two in First Corinthians. If we had time, we could go through the actual text, but we don't have time
Yeah.
for that. But
Sure.
Paul talks about two very distinct situations. One
Mm-hmm.
is buying meat from the market, and all meat would have been sacrificed to an idol. So,
Okay.
in that sense, you're participating with idols. And
Mm.
Paul says, in that sense, with, you're not participating in any worship of idols by buying
Mm.
meat. It's
Mm.
it's very it you can redeem the meat. It's all God's meat. The idol is
Okay.
nothing.
Okay.
But there's another situation in which you show up to someone's house and all
Mm.
of the sudden what you thought was a normal meal turns into a worship service. And
Yes.
Paul says when you're involved in an idol, when you're involved in a worship service,
Mm-hmm.
you must have nothing to do with the worship service. And that to me is the connection to yoga, that it
Mm.
is a worship service that cannot be redeemed for Christians.
Right.
That
Right.
you are entering into. It is very it's hard for people to accept this, but it would be akin to walking into a Hindu temple, bowing down to Ganesh and saying, in my heart I'm worshiping Jesus, so it's okay.
Right.
um,
Yes.
so that's the connection that I believe that yoga. Now here's a major caveat, which is that the average Westerner doesn't necessarily understand that connection.
Mm. Mm.
uh, they don't understand all the details. And so for them, they are actually innocently partaking in a worship service.
Right.
Um, but I would say the major danger, and I think this is the important part, is
Mm.
that yoga is actually a very common path to a type of spirituality in the Christian life, which is pagan.
Mm.
Which is common in many forms.
Right.
We have actually a lot of forms of Christianity, a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
life, and a lot of
Okay.
books, even well accepted books, well
Mm.
accepted authors teaching about spiritual life. I would argue they're actually teaching a pagan form of spiritual life. Uh, and I would argue heavily that yoga is actually another pagan form of spiritual life that people are trying to seek.
Mm.
Whether you are aware of it or not, you
Right.
are participating in a Hindu religious practice,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you're not following the biblical command to how to worship God.
Yeah, and it seems very, very subtle, because when I was exposed to, I wasn't really particularly interested. It wasn't a very popular practice in my home country, but my dad actually, shared the rationale behind it. It was a common practice even in our home, for the babies to be actually, when as the sun is rising, they would just point the baby to the sun. And over time I got to know it wasn't particularly for sort of religious context, but for the baby to get vitamin D or something like that. uh
Okay, okay.
yeah, so then it was a misconception, but it is true in certain like over time. Then my uncles and some of the relations, when moving from the non-idol Hindu religion to idol based religion, then they just adapted it and made it as a religious context. Basically, then it becomes sun worship. So
Yeah,
how subtle it is, right? So even now
yeah.
we could just walk in the morning, in the evening they'll say the sun is good, for you. But eventually, but if you intentionally doing it, and the suppose and kind of activity that's going intentionally there, I guess that's where the deceptions creeps in slowly.
Yeah, I think um, that's a good point. It's not wrong to get sun and get some vitamin D, right?
Yes, yes.
And so there's an over, if you had a Venn diagram, if you will, there's
Right,
an overlap at
right.
which we're doing the same thing.
Mm,
Um, but the important part is in the details, right? Is
right,
that by calling it yoga and by
right,
doing certain poses,
right.
you are embracing a religious practice.
Mm,
So there's a Venn diagram at which Pilates and yoga might do a similar exercise. And
okay,
but by the very nature that we're calling it Pilates,
okay.
uh, and not
Has this,
yoga,
right.
we have actually separated out from a religious practice. And really,
Mm.
many of the yoga teachers, at least in the West, I don't really know about here, but I
Hmm.
assume it's even worse here. They're very intentionally religious.
Mm.
And so that is one reason it becomes a path um, to a dangerous form of Christian spirituality, is because they will be pushed, even in greeting with namaste. Most of the yoga, if they're not Indian and it's just not
Hmm.
natural, like second nature to greet people that way, they're
Right.
intentionally greeting people with namaste because they know the religious meaning of that word. And so even learning to say that and in India, many Christians don't greet each other, don't like to greet each other with that word.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
In
so
in
we
my
would
home
greet.
country as well, the Christians were like, as you're entering the church, like, do not, you, even actually the hand gesture, and also even the word namaste. I'm glad
Yeah.
that you brought that up. So how do you see that? Is that sort of Christian wise? Is it acceptable or no?
Yeah. Well, of course, I didn't have a big deal with it in the sense that it's just the word everyone uses. And when I'm out
Hmm.
in public and someone says to me, namaste, I'll respond namaste or namaskar, right? Same word or same idea. But when you come to church and you begin to think, and this is one of the dangers of yoga, is that
Hmm.
true Christian worship, we bring to bear a thoughtful process onto what we're
Mm.
doing. And everything we do, we are considering how to worship the true God in the right way.
Right.
Um, and so we are seeking to remove all contamination, all the old nature that we are so prone to follow. And
Right.
so we would come to church, we'd greet with Jai Masiki in Hindi, or praise the Lord, as usually said in English.
It's a good
Um,
one. Yeah.
yeah. And in
Yeah.
fact, I've had a brother, he's a Bangladeshi American. He said he's been teaching his people to say Emmanuel as a
Mm.
greeting. So God
Right.
is with us, right? Which I think is a
Right.
good
Right.
a
Yeah,
good
that's a
way
good
to
one.
greet.
Yeah. 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 Thank you so much.
Uh,
I know we have crossed your time limit, I guess, but I really, really wanted to introduce to you two of my good brothers in this, I would say, the YouTube journey. They are one of my among my mentors as well, besides you. It's HHS, the one with the glasses, and Zons himself is a native Indian. He's from India but lives in the US. Guys,
okay.
we have like 10-15 minutes with Dr. Daniel. Squeeze him, I guess.
Yeah, no, first of all, just thank you for coming by the channel. I was telling Brother SBM, I always look forward to hearing more about whether Hinduism or just missions in India, because it's a country I haven't been to yet, but I do hope to go one day. My first question, I guess, if I may, briefly, is I heard a little bit about this, depending on where you are in India. So I was curious about your experience. Do Christians or Christian missionaries face persecution as they try to spread the gospel? Something I've been curious of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to live in Orissa, and that's one of the more famous examples because there is a large pocket of Christianity. The whole villages that will be Christian in Kandhamal and parts of Orissa, and so there's intense persecution, and especially the last 10 years, which is why we're not there anymore. Um, and there's been a strong nationalistic push to make India more Hindu, and so the persecution has been actually heightened quite a bit. But even 2008, I believe it was, there was a pretty serious outbreak of persecution in Orissa. Maybe about 100 people were killed, somewhere around there. There was a very famous story of a missionary who would go and visit villages and teach, and was sleep in his car with his children, instead of sleeping in the village. And one day the villagers got angry at him, surrounded the car, set it on fire, and burnt him and his children to death, unfortunately. Even my own experience, where I lived right down the street a couple years before I moved there, they had a goal to reach a certain number of people or plant a certain number of churches, and had reached it. And so we were having a celebration, and an angry mob of Hindus formed and came with sticks and started beating everyone who was there and broke up the meeting. Um, and yeah, in the last 10 years, it's only gotten worse and more difficult.
Wow. Okay. If I could just get one more question before Brother Zons goes, because I know he has a couple himself, I'm sure. But I'll try to shift gears just for a quick second, because I've been to many countries in the world. Many's relative, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or more. And I'm also a veteran. So I wanted to ask you, because we don't normally get to ask this, but I just feel led to ask it. Being that you've been in countries where Christianity's persecuted, you're a mission, a teacher, how would you say it has affected your personal walk with the Lord? Mainly positively, because in a lot of places in the world, we really can start to get complacent in our ability
Mhm.
to worship and be thankful to God openly or to spread the gospel.
Amen.
How has that been for you, understanding how bad it can be trying to religion, and
Yeah,
how has that enhanced your personal walk with God?
yeah. Actually, I teach New Testament predominantly, and one of the difficulties of teaching New Testament in the West and in America specifically is that we don't face persecution, and the focus of the vast majority of the New Testament is on the fact that God calls us to suffer in His pattern. So First Peter is very heavily, the whole theme of the First Peter is you're going to be alien strangers with no rights, even though you're heirs of God who are going to inherit everything. But in the time until He comes, you're going to follow in Jesus' pattern,
Mm,
who suffered for us, and so we go and suffer for the world according to the will of God. And he says, that's one of his phrases in First Peter is if you should suffer by the will of God, not by the will of man, even though men are the one doing the persecuting, know that it's all God's plan. James is very clear. You consider it all joy when you encounter trials of various kinds. And so a lot of the New Testament is almost feels unapplicable in the Western context. Like, what is this?
mm,
How is this? And then James 1, Romans 5 teaches us very clearly that God's pattern for spiritual growth is that we might one of the main ways that he teaches to grow us is through our enduring trials, which we don't have a lot of, and so in that sense, I knew that as a New Testament scholar before I ever came to the field, and so I'm not surprised when I see it. And honestly, in my own life, I feel somewhat insulated from it, even though it does happen around me. Because at the end of the day, usually, not always, but usually, if I get in trouble, they send me home, right? They just kick me out of their country. And I
Right.
actually and if I go home, I get to go to an easier place. So in a certain sense, the persecution would only lead to something easier in my life in a certain sense. Um, Although, I've been falsely accused by an Indian man and threatened with imprisonment, and and there are missionaries who suffered even to the point of imprisonment and death. We have had martyrs within our own organization in various countries over various years. Not in the past, but in the recent times, we have had martyrs within our own mission. And so that's always on the forefront of our mind is that but I would say the main thing for me personally is that I give up. I have that call of Jesus to leave my family and the comforts that I do have in America and come and work in a different country, speak in a language which just does not come as, naturally as what we're speaking right now. And that's always stressful. And so I've seen God work through my life in many of those various different ways. But certainly, we have an opportunity to encourage our brothers and sisters who are suffering direct persecution for their faith. And even here in Thailand, where they're not persecuted physically often, there certainly is a social persecution. If you accept Christianity, you are leaving the religion of your country, of your people, and your family will not be happy with you in general.
Yeah, well, I do want to say first, thank you for that reflection. And second, believe it or not, I'm quite jealous of both you and Brother SBM, because I tried to move to Thailand. It got to the last spot in my company where I work because I was going to work from Thailand, and it fell through at the very last stage. I kid you not. I was ready to put all my stuff in storage, except for a few things, and boom, being the first thing smoking, but it fell through. So, but thank you so much for that insight. I pray that message will bless many people as we enjoy our first world comforts. And I definitely know what you mean about being in areas where you don't have them. Brother Zons, great to see you, and I'm sure you have a few things.
Hey, is it Dr. Daniel? Is that right?
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
Daniel's fine, but
Yeah, I was born and raised in Chennai, so we don't face any persecution really, other than just being a minority. But North India obviously is in a different spot.
yeah.
I was there in July, and I did see the massive nationalism that's happening.
Yeah.
Probably in the 90s, it was actually becoming much more of a secular country, I would say. Ever since the current government, I think it's gotten very nationalistic. Um, Ironically, I think something similar is happening in the United States, but nothing to that extreme, right?
Yeah.
I think here Christianity is kind of coming back. Conservative Christianity is coming back. Over there, I think the Hindu religion's coming back. Um, and then in AP, we had a pastor that ended up passing away because he was evangelizing a bunch of Muslims and Hindus, and he got publicly dragged out in front of his family, and they essentially stoned him.
Mm.
So I know that these things are still happening. Do you kind of see maybe the next 5 to 10 years that becoming a little bit better, or how do you see that going forward?
When it all started in around 2014 or whatever it was, I think we were hopeful that it would be a wave, and that sort of has happened, where the
Mhm.
current party in power, they fall out of favor, and then the more secular party comes in. Um, but from our friends that we talk to who are still there and our connections, that has been the opposite. That
Yeah.
it has actually just continued to get more difficult, and so yeah, I don't know in the Lord's providence what He's going to do. But we don't see we I don't know that I have high hopes at this point for a reversal. I think it might take something dramatic.
Yeah, and I think so. I think I kind of agree. I don't know what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. I don't see things necessarily changing too dramatically. Um, at the same time, I see that I see a couple of things. I see like the Western allure changing. Like there was this notion of the West, being good. And I see that kind of shifting, you know what I mean? Some of that. So it might be influencing Hinduism in general. But then also it's kind of strange that I see so much rise of secularism in India, at least in South. In South India, I see so much just atheism, to be honest.
Mm.
I see like people being less religious overall, and so I see that as like a huge factor that's happening. So yeah, I see the whole country changing. One of the things I will say that it's kind of interesting that your New Testament, because when I was over there in the Evangelical Literature Society, they said that the number one thing they're missing is like Grudem systematics. They're saying like there's so much hunger for the word of the people over there. They're so hungry for the word. And I just constantly think of like how much abundance we have here in the West. It's so much resources. It's unbelievable. I could find anything and everything about any period of theology, but man, it's just so hungry. Um, how do you feel like with um, in terms of the strategy that you guys use for Hindus in general? Are you feeling like, because over here, what we're seeing is like a lot of Hindus come here and they essentially see America as successful and prosperous, but it's extremely hard to evangelize to them because they
Mhm.
see, like you're saying, it's just another religion. Sorry, it's like another God. And so I have typically used something like caste, or I've used something. It's practical apologetics, not like rational apologetics. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not like logic. I use like practical means. But a lot of people here in the United States are asking for training on Hinduism apologetics. So, one of the things that might be beneficial is like you possibly even talking about how you bring the gospel to Hindus, because I don't think they understand
Mhm.
here how to reach Hindus, especially
We
given what's
don't,
moving.
for the record.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the number one request I get, actually. I get, how do we reach Hindus? We don't know.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I think because I also, having worked in Hinduism and Buddhism, and then I encountered Muslims, and even I am a little bit like, oh, how do you start? And probably that's one of the hardest places, because at the core, the gospel message is cuts through cultures, and so there's a certain sense in which you really don't need something terribly clever. You just need to know the basic gospel message and present it clearly and simply.
mm,
The one addition to that would be everybody's starting place is at a different point. So you're going to start with a Muslim in a different place than you would start with a Hindu, in a different place than you might start with a Buddhist. Um, so for Hindus, you really do have to start with creation, and you have to get them to understand what the Bible teaches about creation, because that is the basis for why Jesus' sacrifice is both needed and
Mhm.
effective. Uh, so for Hindus, they believe that God created the world. So we have to talk about uh, the creation of the world, the real God who created the world, and how men became sinful, because they would not accept that. So you have to really start at the very basics. That's probably number one thing that's probably difficult for a Western mind, is that you have to actually start in Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so for a Buddhist, they don't believe God. There's a God who created the world. They don't have any creation story at all. So it's actually easier in a way with the Buddhists, because they just don't know where it came from. Buddha didn't teach them. And so you just explain to them where the world came from. So I've had people in Buddhism tell me, oh, that's where the world came from.
Mm,
Now they also think I'm crazy for believing the Bible. So you got to understand that if it's the first time they're hearing it, they're going to think you're crazy probably. But we stand on the truth of God's word, and we present it as God has given it to us. He was there, we weren't there, so we trust His word, and so I think that starting point, you have to start with God created the world perfect. How did evil come into the world? He gave one command. Adam broke that command. Adam receives the punishment of breaking that command, which is death, and his nature is fallen. And now all of his sons and children are fallen in his nature. And we need another man who keeps the law perfectly, who
mm.
can take the punishment that Adam uh, and his
Y-
sons deserve. Yeah.
I gotta say this. We've been dealing a lot with I don't know if you know about Eastern Orthodoxy. And one thing I'll say is, just outside of Christianity, how simple the gospel is, the way you present it. Like, there was a command, the first man broke that command, the second Adam comes in, pays the penalty for the sin, and then rescues us from death. That is so easy, and to understand, is digestible, and actually creates, in my opinion, the proper contradiction with the Hindu worldview, because in the Hindu worldview, you're essentially trying to redeem yourself, right? You're trying to escape your the cycles.
Mhm.
But then I feel like Christianity, in the proper place, says you can't do that, and you need God to
Yeah.
actually literally come and do
Right.
that.
Right.
Which
Right.
is just an interesting like
Yeah.
simplicity of the gospel
Yeah.
saves, right? Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
need like a PhD. You just need the very
Right.
simple
Yeah.
thing. Um,
And with each person, because Hinduism is so individualistic, you never know where you're going to end up. And so you kind of present a basic message, and then there's all sorts of different areas that he might want to go down when you're talking to him. So the guy who is all about meditation at night, well, then you go down more like the practical side that, Jesus brings us peace, or somebody who's afraid of spirits. Jesus has a power over spirits. But, you start with the core, simple
Yeah.
gospel. And from there, you can branch out to whatever that person, has a felt need, shall we say. But you got to start with the simple, basic gospel.
Yeah, and it could get really hot, at least with my friends in India that we talk to, man. It's just it definitely gets hot because their number one objection is not, I think, what we see in the West. In the West, it's like, well, did the resurrection happen? Or that would be the
Mhm.
objection. The number one objection is, how dare you say your way is the only way,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so they're like, that's like the most offensive thing. It's like you say your way is the only way. That's the, and then
Though that one has come strong on in the West.
that's become, as we've become more Eastern, I think, like that's
Yeah,
become the thing.
yeah.
But
It's probably not a coincidence that yoga's
yeah,
rise and that viewpoint's rise have happened together and came at the same similar
yeah,
time.
it's like this postmodernism thing where
Yeah.
multiple things can be true at the same time. But then I definitely see that strong, like, you cannot achieve, perfection in front of God. God is not just trying to work with you. God is perfect. Pushing
Mhm.
that helps, I think, a lot, because it's not a matter of despair. It's a matter of just recognizing who God is,
Mm.
and His holiness. And I think that drives the wedge out that I've seen. Like, my wife, like, she has tons of Hindu friends, and I've said, um, your biggest fault is thinking, not that God doesn't love you or anything. Your biggest fault is just thinking that you can do something about your sinfulness. And then I'll honestly say to any human being, go 7 days without sin, and then everyone will tell me they can't do that. And then I feel like that gives a gateway to Jesus, because even in Hinduism, um, like Krishna, he's not perfect. He's good, but he has his own faults. You know what I mean? And then he achieves, moksha. So, like, I feel like Jesus is a good example of perfection in Hinduism, rather than, you know uh, anything else. It's like he can escape the death payment that we can't do.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. That's the number one thing I get from my friends is, how do you reach Hindus? And isn't, like, it's not a clear cut thing. It's a every single person is different, but
Mm.
ultimately it has to bring them down to the despair that they cannot be good in of themselves.
Mhm.
So yeah. Anyway, that's a thing that I've seen with Hindus.
Yeah.
They make it really tricky.
And I
Yeah.
would say in the Buddhist world, they're even harder to reach than most Hindus that I encounter. And it's kind of along the lines that you're talking about. I've asked some missionaries who've been here 30 plus years, and I say, what's the number one factor where you see a Buddhist will accept Jesus? And they said, oh, they have to get to a point where they basically have gone crazy and
Yep.
everyone
Right.
thinks they're crazy.
Right.
And
Right.
which is probably similar for the Hindu, is they have to reach a low at
Yeah.
which they're almost out of their mind and they're willing to
Yeah.
turn to the Lord.
Amen. Yeah.
So it is a
Yeah.
spiritual work in the end of the day.
Dr. Daniel, I don't want my wife to hear that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have maybe a different experience there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I gotta give the I had to give her the reform gospel. You're a
Yeah,
lost
yeah,
sinner in need of God. And
yeah,
Just
yeah, but
read
it's
her.
all the work of God. It's all
So
the work
yeah.
of God.
ironically, the work of Augustine against Pelagius helps a lot. I kid you not. I kid you not. When you read about the Pelagian attempts to, reconcile themselves with God, and then Augustine just says, "Nope, you can't do anything.
Mhm.
Everyone is sinful." That actually helps a lot. But I actually agree. They're very. If you've studied Eastern Orthodoxy, you will see a link between them and Hinduism very strongly. Their view of
Yeah, yeah,
theosis and
yeah.
deification and those kinds of things. You'll see that link, which is ironic. I don't know where that even comes from.
Yeah, I
I
think when I study that, I read Plato, and I've gotten into reading Plato or understanding what Plato and Aristotle were trying to get at. And to me, they're just the Western side of the Buddhist Hindu coin. They're just a Western
I was
take
thinking
on the
Buddhism.
same. Yeah,
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 That's another for
yeah,
discussion, I guess. We gotta have Dr.
yeah.
Daniel again.
I
And I
agree.
also wanted to, yeah, go ahead, just go.
No, I was gonna say that's the one thing I even have some experience with because I've tried to evangelize to some Buddhist people that I've met in Thailand. Actually, I met my last taxi ride home. I was even trying to give the gospel. Guy's mom was Christian, dad was a Buddhist, and he,
Mm.
I was thinking about some of the things you guys were saying about real quick. I know you got to wrap, brother, but he
No.
was saying, he was like, well, what does Christianity have different? I mean, and I'm going over like how we're sinners, my Western fronema. And he was like, yeah, no, we have that too. It was just, so we were just going through all these things. And but the next time I'm there, I won't forget what you said about Genesis. But it's the experience that I was happy to get. Trying to explain some of these things to people. But as Brother Zans was talking about what he said about Pelagius and Hindus in the East, I was thinking my experience with Buddhism in the East has also been quite similar. So just wanted to throw that out there, and I appreciate that. I won't forget. I promise you, Dr. Dan, you don't know the effect you've had. I won't forget
Yeah.
Genesis next time I talk to a Buddhist. Thank you, Brother SB.
And it just struck me because when Dr. Daniel Jones, my wife, and when she became a believer, very very young believer, very new, she had still this. We were talking. One of the things we started in our Bible study was Genesis. So how God created man, male and female, in His own image and likeness. For her, it was totally strange because she thought, she descended the evolution. We came from the apes and so forth. So that was sort of like, I'm not sure whether it's in the Thai syllabus or not, but that's the understanding. Like, we came from monkeys. Like, what are you talking about? And it took the biblical creationism that to break the camel's back, I guess, to really bring her to understanding that she is like, in her image and likeness, precious, being made after the image and likeness of God.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
teaching English in a remote village in Isan in northeast Thailand to some kids every
Hmm.
Saturday for a couple months of my life. And I just hung out teaching them English through Genesis 1 stories, Adam and Eve and all that.
Hmm.
And I had our Isan teacher with us. It was her village. She was the only believer. We were trying to reach more. And after about 3 months, I said, "So what do all the kids think about what I've been telling them about Adam and Eve and all of this?" And they said, "Oh, they think you're crazy." Uh, so just because we tell them doesn't mean they'll believe it, but it is to but they just were all
Right.
because Buddhism doesn't have a creation myth. They
Mm,
just whatever science says, that's what they
right.
accept. So Hinduism is a bit different in that they do have actually an idea of creation. So we kind of have to confront them on that incorrect
Right.
understanding of creation.
Yeah.
All right. Zons, you wanted to ask anything in the closing note?
No, I think this has been good. I really enjoyed your conversation. So I do appreciate the work you do with Hindus. It is a neglected people group, largely in the West. So I do appreciate the moving there and learning the language and all of those things. I know it's sometimes hard to hear that, but we really appreciate the fact that you reached out to the Indians and brought the gospel to them. So thank you.
And
Yeah.
now Dr. Daniel is in Thailand. Dr. Daniel, if you don't mind, there's one question for you for the panel: Is evangelism harder for the Hindus or Muslims?
This is for everybody.
Oh, okay. I guess
I
I'll
Yeah.
guess
go first.
harder need to be qualified because right? Because is it like politically harder, right? Are there more blocks or the argumentations hard? You know what I mean? Maybe it needs to be clarified. I don't think that. Um, I think it's harder culturally sometimes, depending on the context. Like you know what I mean. Harder can mean different things. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a Hindu going to a Christian, or if you're a Muslim becoming a Christian, if you come from a very strong family, it's extremely hard, right? But then I think, generally speaking, I think Muslim arguments are easier to beat than Hindu arguments. That's my
Because
opinion.
there's grounding. There's
Yeah,
grounding in
yeah,
some.
right. You have like the Islamic dilemma and things like that. From just a
And then
logical perspective, I think Islamic arguments are easy to beat compared to Hindu, because Hinduism just can't. It's like Jello to the wall. You can't nail it. Um, but culturally, I almost think they're almost just as hard. I would say. But yeah, you guys
wow.
go ahead.
I would throw my 2 cents in there. Well, I've only had an opportunity knowingly of 0 Hindus. I'm not gonna say I don't know any, but knowingly knowing any. I mean, I work with Indians, but I don't normally go around saying, "Are you a Hindu?" So for me, it kind of defaults to one group. But what I would say, at least from my perspective, even in my world travels, I would say Islam, but for a very specific reason. Not because it's easy. Obviously, we need God's grace, and we need assistance, and God has to enlighten these people and so forth. But the reason I would say Islam is easier is simply because they lean on our stuff.
Mhm.
That is what the big difference, right? Hinduism, to my knowledge, again, we have experts here. I'm the guy who hasn't been to India, nor am I a native Indian, but I don't know if anything even sort of like that backing exists. But in Islam, they say that they're faith of Abraham, and the biblical text, and even though we know they say it's corrupted, those lies and so forth, we have so many things that is already common ground. It's just breaking the lie that's told about our book. Hence arguments like the Islamic dilemma and so forth. Now, the
Mhm.
unfortunate thing is they're one of the most violent groups of all the religions, and I use that term as loosely as I can. But if I had to pick one in my current state, my current knowledge, I would say Islam, but only for the reasons I listed.
Mm, mm. And just in the closing note, I think I guess Dr. Daniel answered as a true teacher of the scripture, because who is harder? Everyone is harder, because First Corinthians 1:18 says, "For the preaching of the cross, for the word of let me get this correct. Where is it? For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God."
Amen.
So talking to a New Testament teacher over here. So guys, every week that I meet Dr. Daniel, I hope he doesn't feel get frustrated with me, because I always hold him to the dinner time, and then bring him all the theological question for him. And he is such a wonderful person. Really, Dr. Daniel, thank you for your time today. And we even talked about the Ephesians controversy. He has some insights on that, and a couple of other topics that he himself is diving into. If he has time, we really, really love to have you back again and talk more about this. Dr. Daniel, thank you so much for your
Absolutely.
time today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So yeah, we'll see you soon, and thank you so much, everyone. And Brother HHS and Zons, thank you for joining me today, and everyone as well who stayed throughout this discussion. God bless you, where you are from, wherever you are. Stay safe and be well. Take care, guys. God bless you.
Blessings.